Welcome back to Utility Sports. In today's video, we have another NFL mock draft. I'm really excited to present this one to you guys. Haven't done it for a little while. At number one, we have the Chicago Bears, left with a very difficult decision in terms of the route that they want to go for the draft. There's a lot of question marks, surrounding this team, speculation on what they're going to do. But under the assumption that they do stay here and pick at number one, it's very difficult to not go with a guy like Will Anderson, who is the best defensive player in the entire draft with his ability to defend against the run and also rush the quarterback. This is a home run level selection here for the Bears. They are desperately looking to reconfigure this defense. Obviously, Ryan Poles has got some key decisions to make in the draft, and it all starts at number one by taking the best defensive player that they have to offer in this class. The next one here, we have the Houston Texans, which a lot of it kind of stems on the head coaching hire and things of that nature, but I think it's pretty clear and obvious that they will go quarterback with this pick. At number two, you're left with a couple of really good options here to pick from. Bryce Young, Will Levis, CJ Stroud. I really don't know if Will Levis is going to be in that true conversation. I feel like CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are kind of the coin flip here for Houston. Will Levis does have some interesting upside qualities in terms of his arm strength and athleticism, but I think it's, to me, looking more and more likely that Bryce Young is the quarterback selection for the Texans, a team that's going to be looking to rebuild. I think there's a couple of things that they have to improve on. Maybe they end up moving down and acquiring more picks, but I think at the end of the day, they're going to be looking for a quarterback. Therefore, I believe that they do end up staying and selecting a QB. Following that up is Arizona, in a position here where they have to continue to build this defense. They need to be better on that side of the ball. Offensively, they got to be better too. I mean, through and through, the Cardinals are going through a transitional period with Kingsbury being out. I think it's a really exciting time to be a Cardinals fan, considering the fact that they have the third overall pick and a franchise level quarterback on their roster. Therefore, you have to consider building up this defense as well. Jalen Carter, the big defensive tackle from Georgia, who is a monster on the interior. He's almost unblockable. He's a phenomenal athlete for his size. Therefore, I think Jalen Carter is the true plug-and-play guy into this Arizona organization that desperately needs some more star power on the defensive side of the ball. At number four, you have the Indianapolis Colts, which I think it's pretty clear that the Colts are going to be seeking out a quarterback. Maybe they end up still going the veteran quarterback route, but that has not necessarily panned out perfectly over the last couple of seasons. We've seen Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan all be the starters over the last couple of seasons. And I just think that maybe it's going to be time for, Chris Ballard to take a different approach to things. I think CJ Stroud is probably going to be the pick here. Really poised in the pocket, super accurate throw over the football. Not a phenomenal athlete, but overall, he has shown a lot of the really good traits that NFL quarterback needs in terms of his poise, his leadership. Those are some of those things that don't show up, obviously, on film. But at the end of the day, I think CJ Stroud is a great option for the Colts. Following that up is Seattle. Seattle coming off of the wild card loss. However, there's a lot to build on going into this draft. A couple of different things that they can do here, in my opinion, that could really propel them is addressing the defensive side of the ball again. Schneider's done a great job in terms of what he's wanted to build on that defense. And I think guys like Tariq Woolen and also the next pick, which is Myles Murphy, are great building blocks moving forward in the future. Myles Murphy does a great job getting after the quarterback and making it very, very difficult on opposing offenses from what he brings from his skill set as a pass rusher. Also, another guy that can defend the run very, very well. And I think at number five, Seattle is poised to take a defensive player potentially. A lot of things are going to happen in terms of like the Geno Smith saga, but to me, Myles Murphy makes a lot of sense. Following that up at number six, we have the Detroit Lions. Detroit is going to be looking to address this defense, in my opinion. I think they're comfortable with Jared Goff being their quarterback for another season, considering how well their offense did holistically last year. Adding to the interior of that defensive line could make some sense. They're also going to be looking at some edges, maybe at the cornerback position. But I think Brian Brzee does a great job on that defensive line. He's a true disruptor, a true run stopper, one of the best run stoppers in the entire class. in terms of pass rushing, he has the skill set to, potentially become even more productive as a pro rather than a collegiate player. However, his motor is unmatched to anybody in this class. This guy gives it 100% every single time he's, taking a snap on the football field. And that's why I think he's a Dan Campbell guy here in Detroit. Number 7, we have the Raiders, and the Raiders, to me, are going to be looking at the quarterback position. I know they liked what they've seen out of Jarrett Stidham at the final, couple of games of the year, but I think that quarterback is still on their radar. To me, that leaves Will Levis, the guy that's potentially got the highest ceiling of the QBs in this current class in terms of his athleticism, his frame, his arm strength. All of those are a nice culmination of a exciting prospect. There's a couple of people that liken him to Justin Herbert and Josh Allen in terms of physicality and frame. But, sometimes these quarterbacks like Will Levis go a little under the radar and they fall a tiny bit in the draft process because, they're not super polished at the collegiate level. But, sometimes some of these guys make better pros than they are college players. Number 8, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta desperately is trying to address a couple of areas on that defense. Offensively, they got a little ways to go, but Arthur Smith is a coach that gets the most out of his players, in my opinion, especially on the offensive side of the football. And looking at Atlanta here, I think this is a good opportunity for them to take a very talented pass rusher in Tyree Wilson, a guy that can really get after the quarterback and help out this edge unit in terms of what the Falcons have to offer. They have some good playmakers on defense, but they need to be better on that side of the ball. I'm sure Falcons fans can attest to this. Getting an edge rusher that can really get after the quarterback and apply some pressure is a key need for this Atlanta team. At number 9, we got the Carolina Panthers. And now this might be a little bit of a hotter take, but I think Anthony Richardson ends up going to the Panthers. We saw a little bit of success with Sam Darnold late in the season, but the quarterback position is not essentially filled for this team. Maybe they look out and try to get a veteran, but at the end of the day, when you look at the actual physicality that Anthony Richardson brings as a runner, as a thrower of the football, he's got a cannon arm and he's a super dynamic athlete. Therefore, the combination of that is enough for him to be drafted in the top 10, in my opinion. At number 10, we got Philadelphia. Philadelphia is in a position where their roster is pretty well set out. And I think a guy that would fit in with this team, Brian Branch, who has been quietly climbing up draft boards, once thought to be a mid second round pick, now is working himself into the conversation, of being a top 15 player. Brian Branch is all over the football field, great instincts, does a great job reacting to the football and not getting too caught up in some of the eye candy that some of these safeties tend to bite on. Brian Branch, really good, solid pro at the next level. It's going to fit right in with this Philadelphia Eagles defense. Now with the Tennessee Titans here, they definitely missed A.J. Brown this year. There's no question about that. Treylon Burks, he's a good wide receiver. I think they need a little bit more on the perimeter for them to be overall effective. And I think when you look at that and some of the guys this year that stood out, one of them being Quentin Johnston from TCU, a player that you have to consider as a guy that's in this area with his 6'4" frame, good athleticism. He's a good route runner, not as great of a contested catch guy as most people like to believe, but to me, Quentin Johnston is a heck of a prospect. At 12, we have the Houston Texans. Houston Texans are in another position here where they can improve upon this offense. I think the wide receiver position is somewhere you have to look. Jordan Addison, the former Pitt Panther, transfers over to USC and has a very productive season with Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. Overall, to me, this makes a lot of sense from the standpoint of Jordan Addison going to be a good playmaker, good route runner, and another guy that the Texans can actually start to build around on this offense, including, guys like Dameon Pierce and aforementioned second overall pick here in Bryce Young. So that's a nice offense moving forward. Number 13, we got the New York Jets. And New York Jets here, to me, I think with Joe Douglas's track record, to me, it makes sense for them to potentially look at that offensive line again, specifically at the tackle spot. I'm not exactly sure what the future of this offensive line is necessarily going to hold, but with the track record that he's had in terms of enjoying taking some guys in the first round with that position, we've seen Mekhi Becton, AVT as well. I think it's possible that they look offensive line again And when they're looking at the actual value, Peter Skoronski could be a top 10 pick, slides a little bit, but Joe Douglas capitalizes on some value, which he has been known to do, and takes Skoronski, and they will make the rest work and figure it out. AVT being the guard. I think there's a lot to like about this offensive line moving forward, and would be one of the top premier units in the entire league. Number 14, we got the New England Patriots. New England Patriots have to get a little more dynamic on the perimeter, in my opinion. And that, to me, is Jackson Smith and Jigba, with how great of a season he had last year and then being very limited at this point, in the season, he didn't see the field that much. So looking at what New England can do, they can get a super dynamic receiver, a guy that's a high volume pass catcher, and they get him at a discounted price where people thought he very well could be a top 5 pick going into this year, and now he falls to 14 because of some of those injuries. Number 15 is the Green Bay Packers, and the Green Bay Packers here, this is a tough position to be in because we don't know exactly what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. There's so much speculation going on currently. I think they're going to look actually at that wide receiver position, and they're going to double dip. Couple of guys that you really can like in this area, but Josh Downs has cemented himself as a phenomenal slot receiver, a guy that is super quick in and out of his breaks. In terms of his route running, phenomenal. He is so dynamic and can really be a guy that could take the top off the defense as well. This team could build up a lot of speed with their receiving core, Christian Watson, and then throw in a guy like Josh Downs, who had a terrific season at North Carolina. I think this would be a great Green Bay pick here, going with a guy like Downs. At number 16, we have the Commanders. Commanders are probably going to be looking along that offensive line and trying to support whoever ends up being the next quarterback, because it's kind of tough at this juncture. I don't know that they would go with a guy like Tanner McKee here at this spot. I think there is a possibility that they look at the QB position, but I'm not exactly sure what their plan is. Maybe they're going to trade for a guy like Derek Carr. That I think that's a realistic outcome. But here at 16, I think you're going to be more or less looking at the tackle position. To me, you could see a guy like Broderick Jones going here, physical tackle, guy that can really road grade and create a lot of big running lanes, especially for a guy like Brian Robinson. This Commanders team is very close in terms of getting into the postseason. We saw it this year, even with some up and down quarterback play. But another part of it is too, they need to be better along that offensive line. Broderick Jones is a terrific prospect that fits exactly what the Commanders are looking for. Speaking of another offensive lineman needy team, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they struggled to run the football. They struggled to throw the football this year, a lot of which has to do with the offensive line play being a little poor. And I think that Paris Johnson Jr., a guy that had a terrific season at Ohio State, consistent tackle, a guy that was really good in pass protection, that is going to help out the Steelers tremendously here. That's something I thought they should have considered last year in the first round. Obviously went with Kenny Pickett, and they kind of paid the price this year a little bit. They were able to be competitive, but I felt they could have been a playoff level team had they addressed that offensive line a little bit more, whether that was in the draft or in free agency, and hit on some of those players. At number 18, we have the Detroit Lions. Now with the Detroit Lions, there is so much to love about what they can do with their future. Having 2 first-round picks here is obviously huge. Now I was very conflicted on the fact that maybe they go with Michael Mayer, or they go with a cornerback as well. And I landed on the idea of them drafting more defense. Their offense was not a big issue this year. Maybe Brock Wright takes a step up next year and becomes a better tight end. Shane Zylstra from Minnesota State, another guy that saw some more playing time, but definitely could warrant him seeing a little bit more next season. I'm going to have them go with Cam Smith. His tape definitely stands out. Fantastic on breaking in on the football. Does a great job mirroring the receiver. Doesn't get too caught up in terms of the receiver head movement. Does a great job keeping his eyes on the hips of a receiver and staying locked into him. So a good man-to-man guy, and I think would be really good on the back half of that Detroit Lions defense. At number 19, we got the Bucs, and I think the inevitables here. I think they might end up reaching for a quarterback. Maybe they go out and get an established veteran, but I think that this is Tanner McKee territory. Tanner McKee is not the flashiest quarterback you've seen, but he could be a steady option for the Buccaneers moving forward. What's the situation with Kyle Trask? How much do they like him? That's a lot of questions that we have to figure out, and probably the hardest team for me to mock right now in terms of where they're going. A lot of good players that were left on the board for their selection, but Tanner McKee could be a good steady quarterback option for them moving forward. At number 20, we got the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks, once again, we go up and take a look. The fact that they were able to take Myles Murphy here was huge. Now, this team is super, super talented across the board. Now, I know they like Noah Fant, and that you have to have some questions. Maybe they would go with Mayer here. I think they could look potentially at corner or maybe another receiver. And I think honestly, they're going to add to that receiver room. Zay Flowers from Boston College, a dynamic receiving threat that people are finally starting to notice a little bit more in some of these mock drafts. And Seattle adds another playmaker to this team. Put him alongside a DK Metcalf. This offense gets a little scarier. And now the next pick here, we got the Chargers, and the Chargers, in my opinion, have to look at that offensive tackle position. That's something that, in my opinion, they gotta shore up. They gotta make sure they're a little bit better there. And it's tough. It's tough because I lean a little back and forth between the tackle spot. I also look at the tight end position as a need. I know some people love Gerald Everett, but I think when you can get a player as talented as Michael Mayer at this spot, you have to do it. I was so back and forth. Now, I think with the remaining picks, they have to prioritize getting a tackle, but with a guy like Michael Mayer and how productive he was at Notre Dame and how much upside he shows, to me, getting Herbert another weapon is not going to hurt at all. At 22, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Now, when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, I think this is a place where you could definitely look at, them addressing the cornerback spot. There's a lot of really good corners on the board here in terms of what is available. You look at Witherspoon, you look at Joey Porter, Kelee Ringo. Kelee Ringo continues to fall down boards. I just don't think that's super warranted. With his length, his athleticism, his man coverage skills, to me, Ringo makes a lot of sense for this team. Another team that could be looking in that corner department is Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville was another landing spot of mine for Michael Mayer, but with him going a little bit earlier off the board, I think the corner position is a must. They're trying to build up the secondary, trying to build this team. They could look at potentially getting another safety, or they could also look at getting a corner here. And to me, with Shaq Griffin likely being cut in the offseason due to the cap constraints, I think Devin Witherspoon is a cornerback prospect that people are starting to finally notice. With his play at Illinois, he was fantastic this year. A true corner that can make a lot of plays on the perimeter, good ball skills, and a guy that is a willing tackler as well. Good form. He's a hard hitter. Definitely. If you haven't seen his highlights, I would recommend it for sure. We're going to make this Minnesota's pick. We're going to make this Minnesota's pick just to essentially fix the messed up order here. Now, if this is Minnesota's pick, I think they are going to be going with a guy like Joey Porter Jr. or Eli Ricks. Eli Ricks, to me, offers so much upside at the 6'2" frame, terrific athlete, good ball skills, super long defender. So the Vikings at 24 get an awesome corner in Eli Ricks. Now at the next one here, we have the Dallas Cowboys. And the Dallas Cowboys here are in a good spot. Why do I say they're in a good spot? Because they have built up this team very well. They are suited to, make another big run potentially in the postseason. And I think with the Cowboys, they have to continue to address that offensive line, especially on the interior. Osiris Torrance is one of those guys that is phenomenal. He's a big dude, knows how to get downhill, creates running lanes for his running backs, and also can keep his quarterback up in pass protection. Osiris Torrance is a big dude that is going to cause a lot of problems at the next level. 26, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Cincinnati Bengals here, to be completely transparent, it's tough. It's tough with the Bengals because they do need to continue to address that offensive line. Anton Harrison's a guy that you can either have at the tackle spot or you can kick him on into the interior wherever you feel. He has that optionality. Really, really good tackle at Oklahoma. And I think with the Bengals, in terms of where they're currently at, that is a must. At 27, now we have the New York Giants. I know it says Minnesota, but we're flip-flopping them. Now with the New York Giants here, it's kind of tough because I've considered, along the defense, they continue to, they can continue to get better. this is one of the tougher picks, but wide receiver to me is a must. I think with where they're at offensively, they need another dynamic threat on the perimeter. Jalen Hyatt, a guy that exploded on the scene with Hendon Hooker at Tennessee, he is going to be the pick for the Giants. With what he brings to the table, he's got a knack for the end zone. He's a big play speed receiver that can break any play wide open. Jalen Hyatt to the Giants. 28 is the Denver Broncos. Now, the Denver Broncos are left in a position here where they can continue to make this offense a little bit better. Their defense was terrific this year. And I think there's a couple of different things that you can do with this. John Michael Schmitz is a guy that's not getting a lot of first round consideration, but you can play him at center or at guard. He is so good on the interior, a fantastic run blocker. He's been PFF's highest graded interior offensive lineman all season through and through. And I think when you look at Denver, you have to get better in the middle of that offensive line. And that is a seamless transition, whether he's at guard or at center. 29, we have the Buffalo Bills. And with the Buffalo Bills, you can get really dynamic here, make it a lot of fun. Bijan Robinson from Texas is as dynamic as they come, really great at breaking tackles, has good vision, good speed, good power. Overall, one of those complete backs that Buffalo has been seeking out for quite some time. And I think that would be a worthwhile investment. And at number 30, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. I think defensively, they have to look at that safety position. Antonio Johnson's one of the more unsung prospects in the entire class. And I see him being a really good fit, good coverage safety. Doesn't get caught up too much in terms of, catching his eyes in the backfield and giving up a big play. Antonio Johnson here at number 30 is a good selection, in my opinion. Just worth where Kansas City's at with their roster. I think they could also look at receiver once again. I don't think that would be out of the realm of possibility, but Antonio Johnson there at 30. And then at 31, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this is a position where it might be tough because they very well could look at that running back position, but I think they might wait a little bit later just because of Miles Sanders' contract situation. And also, I wouldn't rule out the fact that a guy like Nolan Smith, who has fallen this far, could be in this top area. Just when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of the strengths of this team, they've built it on a true identity of winning in the trenches. And with those edges getting a little bit older, I think Nolan Smith is a great fit here. So with that being said, Miami obviously does not have their selection there, and we'll take a look at our results. Overall, I love how this turned out, to be completely honest. Now, this is the Vikings pick. They went with Eli Ricks, and then the Giants go with Jalen Hyatt. So overall, I think this is a really fun mock draft to do. There's a lot of differences that we've had in this one versus some of the other ones we've had. So I appreciate you stopping by. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. Also leave a like if you did enjoy the content. Had a lot of fun making this. Let me know in the comments section below what prospect is being underrated in this mock. I'd be happy to read some of those comments and what you guys think in terms of, who are some of those guys that aren't getting enough recognition. I appreciate your time, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.